Are you kidding me? That's your favorite game? What are you, 30? That was your first Final Fantasy? Today on. Welcome everybody to another episode of Press B to Cancel. I am your host, Sick Jake, and today we got a special episode as we break down one of the classic arguments of our generation. There is Nike versus Reebok, there's Coke versus Pepsi, there's Dr. Pepper versus literally any other flavor out there. But today, we're going to discuss and break down the best Final Fantasy games the only way that we know how. They're randomized brackets. That's right. Press B decides on Final Fantasy games. We got a list put together for the community, as well as ourselves, and we're going to break it down. But not alone. No, I'm not always alone. I'm joined by Werewolf. Wolf, how you doing this week?
I'm doing pretty good. Just coming off of the wonderful sickness that's been going around a little while. But other than that, great.
Great. And we got GP. How you doing today, GP?
Doing great. I gotta say, you threw me for a loop when you were doing that intro, and you're like breaking it down the only way we know how. Because then there was a long pause, and I thought you were going to say yelling about it. So I'm planning on that. Yeah.
He who yells loudest is usually the way we go, right?
Right.
And I'm going to win them all.
And Mr. 1000% himself, who won the last brackets, I think every damn category. Chard, how you doing?
When you're good, you're good. What can I say? I'm fantastic. Thank you for having me in this event that I have absolutely no stake or have any idea of what I'm talking about here.
That's okay. Well, I mean, out of all of us, I think you've played the most Final Fantasy, I want to say, having done a year of Final Fantasy. So
I just did the main lines, though. I don't know. I wouldn't give myself the crown just yet. Just wait till the end, then you can crown me.
Okay, hold on though.
Humble.
Let's interject here. Yeah, we got a viewer poll coming in saying Dirge of Cerberus and RC Cola. So
what's wrong with RC Cola? RC Cola is great. I love RC Cola.
Have you ever had
like
a palindrome?
RC Cola, but you hate Dr. Pepper?
My first mixed drink was RC Cola and Crown Royal, and it was called a palindrome. It's so nerdy, but come on, buddy.
Yeah,
Crown is great stuff too.
I get it. I like that.
Right.
RCCR.
Yeah,
never heard of that.
Thank you guys for getting that.
That sounds like a Southern rock band.
Well, we're gonna get right into it because these episodes do go long, and something tells me these brackets might be a little controversial, and there's some debate here. So we're gonna start off nice and easy. I don't even know if this is anybody's favorite game, but it's 1991's Final Fantasy IV on the Super Nintendo versus Final Fantasy Tactics on the PlayStation 1.
Are you fucking kidding me?
Easy.
This is how we start?
These are both great games.
Oh my God. No, they're not.
No,
they're not.
One of them is.
Yeah.
Well, okay, maybe start with the positive side. Let Chard stew for a bit. Who wants to start with the positive of Final Fantasy Tactics? Because I know Chard's going to dump all over it for 15 minutes. Stir that pot.
Who wants to
GP,
go first?
What about you? Do you like Final Fantasy Tactics?
I'm bursting.
Tactics? But this is the one that I don't know anything about. Like, we've had this talk all week. I love Tactics.
I'm going to feed you.
Here. I like Tactics, but not this one.
This is
Do I need to help you? This is the one that's bad. Okay.
No, this is the War of the Lions one.
Okay, then no, this is a great game.
So much support for Final Fantasy Tactics. Wolf, you got
okay.
Let Wolf.
Let me. Okay, sorry.
Okay,
but I do have opinions.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm assuming 4 for the SNES was one of the mystery games in the bracket.
No, it wasn't actually. This is one of the ones community picked. I mean, of course, they would have to pick this one, right?
Well, because I thought we had 4 for the DS on the list.
That's what I thought.
We're just talking 4 overall.
We do. Okay. We have 4 on the SNES and 4 on the DS.
Okay.
Spoilers.
Okay, so
spoiler
4 for the SNES is that this is first off. Let's say Final Fantasy II for the SNES in North America was my first Final Fantasy.
Right.
I absolutely love it. However, since playing the original, I have played the remake for the PlayStation. I've played the remake for the GBA. I've played the one for the DS. I've played it. I haven't played all the way through the PSP one. However, The SNES version is lacking because it's the easy mode one. It's the one that got censored. In this particular case, I got to go with tactics on this. And I know
All right.
Chard is probably like internally screaming at me, but the soundtrack for Tactics is absolutely amazing. You cannot deny that. Secondly, the story in Tactics, while it gets a bit convoluted, handles its subject matter very well. It heavily revolves around politics, religion, conspiracies, equity, all this shit. And I think it absolutely nails those themes and does it in such a way that Game of Thrones tried to aspire to do with a TV show years later and ultimately fell on its face with. Tactics did Game of Thrones better than Game of Thrones.
Wow.
So I got to go with Tactics for the PlayStation on this one.
Well stated. Well,
Wow.
so, okay. Is it okay? Can I bring my points in just real quick?
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, GP.
Okay, cool. Here's the thing. I owe my fandom of Star Wars to Final Fantasy Tactics. So let me take you on that journey real quick. I'm trying to get Chard to be at least 4 shades darker before I go with just the red anger.
I need,
Okay, no.
I need a little more drink of my soda before I get any more darker.
As a youngster, I never really cared for Star Wars because of the heavy politics. I just was like, it's hard for me to follow in my young brain. I wasn't really into it because there was so much exposition before any of the action, which is what I liked. So fast forward to 1997, Tactics comes out, or 98, I guess is probably when I played it. And I was into that game enough, excuse me, that I was, started trying to care about the politics of these stories. And then I go back and I watch Star Wars when, the other re-releases and third redos come out. And I understood it so much better. It was so much easier to follow because if you can digest Tactics, you can handle any of that other kind of shit.
The trade war.
That said, in Chart, I know you are not a huge fan of Tactics. I don't know if you're aware of this, so I'm going to mention this. Do you know about Cloud from Final Fantasy VII being in Tactics? There's a lot of really cool stuff that references Final Fantasy VII. Eris, the flower girl, and then Cloud showing up, and all of his stuff. They gave him an extra limit break. There was some cool stuff there. Now, you all know how much I love Final Fantasy II. And if it weren't for, or Final Fantasy IV, if it weren't for all the ports like Wolf was mentioning, and if it wasn't for the fact that the DS version is on this panel again later, I would lobby harder for Final Fantasy IV on the SNES. But because of that, I'm going Tactics. Thank you.
Wow. Didn't expect that at all. Chard, do you want me to go or would you like to go?
I see what's going on here. Jake, you go ahead.
Are you sure? I don't want to. I don't step on your toes.
No, I know what's going on here. I am. Listen, I am reading between the lines. I am seeing beyond my normal sight. You take this one, buddy. Don't worry.
Well,
Chard's got the Cactuar of Omens right there.
Oh yeah. I'm kind of shocked
sight beyond sight.
That GP didn't go for Final Fantasy IV because I know this is one of your favorite ones.
I'm absolutely not. I know it. I see him reading between the lines here.
Okay. Well, okay. So look, I do like Final Fantasy, and some of the comments I'm going to make through this episode, people may think I don't, but I do. I'm just old and I don't have time anymore to go back and play them, I think is my problem. And they get a bit grindy and they get a bit long, I guess. And you know what? Final Fantasy IV, I tried playing last year. I think it was last year. And it has that problem for me. Even if it is the easy mode, I don't even want to know what the difficult version is. Because I spend more time grinding in Final Fantasy IV than I like to in these kind of games. I much prefer playing the combat in the other titles. I find combat in the other games a lot more interesting. Final Fantasy IV, I know it's early on and it pioneered a lot of cool things. It had a lot of great music. Actually, I think I like the music more in this than Tactics. But the gameplay is not as fun. Yeah. It's not as fun as Tactics to me. Final Fantasy Tactics, I love the hell out of Shining Force. I love Tactics games, and Final Fantasy Tactics took a lot of the stuff I liked in Shining Force and just expanded on it like tenfold. There's so many fun classes in this game, and interesting ones and unique ones. Like there's one that's the calculator, which you get later on. That's cool as hell. I think it takes things like height into consideration or spacing. Like there's different formulas it plugs in, and it does some of the most powerful attacks. And then you can do like there's ninjas and samurais, and then there's beasts. You can all this great stuff. But I like also that you can combine the jobs. Like I'm a sucker for the job system. This is why I like 5 so much. Is the job system. Even Final Fantasy 1 job system. Tactics has that again tenfold. There are so many jobs in this game, and it can all be combined the abilities together. You unlock all the various functions and mix and match your own classes. It's why I love the job system in later titles. It's why I love it in Bravely Default so much. And it all has its roots to Final Fantasy Tactics, I think, for the most part. I love the gameplay in Tactics. The story, it's a bit dry. Yes, it's the Game of Thrones thing. The idea that George R. R. Martin is sitting in a room somewhere like 10 years ago writing Game of Thrones, and he's like, what would Tactics do? Maybe it would have turned out better for him. But the story's a bit dry, and that's why when I saw the recent trailers for a Triangle Strategy, that game coming out, and they're leaning heavily into the politics and all that, and the noble houses and fighting each other type of shtick. And Tactics is what forged that. It's good. It's a bit much at times, though. But I think the gameplay alone and all the vast number of hidden stuff and cool classes unlocked, clouds in there. There's a hidden dungeon. There's a lot to Tactics. I think to me makes it more of a more fun game, a more varied game than Final Fantasy IV. So my vote is also Tactics. I did not expect GP to go for Tactics, though. That's
I know. Also, I want to say this: the one thing that Tactics does that SNES, Final Fantasy IV doesn't do remotely, permadeaths. You can actually lose your characters, and that's to me very cool. That was the first time I'd ever really seen that in a Final Fantasy. And then, of course, with 4, spoiler alert, everybody comes back except for Tella.
Who needs Tella?
Yeah, that is a major point towards Tactics as far as the stakes go, because it's got the permadeath, like you said. You know, any character who isn't a primary story character, if they die, they're just gone.
Yeah, you got 3 rounds to finish what you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then in 4, it's very much a story of just kidding, that was unimportant.
Yeah,
you know,
a lot of psychouts.
There's a ton of psychouts about somebody who dies, but then they don't actually die, and you get them again later, or you run into them again later. It dulls the story just a little bit. And I like I said, I love 4. 4 is my favorite Final Fantasy, but that version is lacking.
It's been done better in the years since.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Chard, what do you think of Final Fantasy IV?
I feel like everybody was paid off for this particular discussion. I feel like our previous discussion before we started this is coming to fruition sooner than anticipated. So that's great. Whatever. You know what? I'm not even going to make a big stink about this. I'm not. Yes, I'm wearing the greatest character in Final Fantasy history shirt right now.
Gold.
Close. As most of you know, my moniker and my caricature that my artist November drew for me was me as my favorite character in any Final Fantasy game. That is Kain. Yes, Kain is messed up. Kain Highwind is effed up. He's a messed up dude. I don't care. I like Dragoons. His armor was cool.
Absolutely.
Let's go back to what, 1992?
91,
92 was 91. That's right.
Yeah.
Okay, I was right there.
One of the first games.
Wow, I do. Wow.
Clearly, he's a fan.
I know my dates. I am over with a childhood friend who has the Super Nintendo. I, of course, am the Genesis kid, so don't judge me. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to be. It's how it happened.
Don't you
sit
apologize.
Down. I am going to be an apologist. I'm going to be an apologist because I should have had a Super Nintendo. We had played Final Fantasy 1, the original, for Nintendo, and we got stuck on the Dark Elf. And we never really made it any further than that because that game's difficulty spike was ridiculous. It was ridiculous as a young child. Enter in Final Fantasy 2, aka Final Fantasy 4 for the Super Nintendo. Enter in me sitting down and seeing the newly developed graphics coming off of the Super Nintendo. Yes, dated as they are at the time, mind-blowing. Listen to the opening track of the Red Wings sailing across the sky. after taking control of another crystal because we don't know why the Baron wants these crystals to be taken. Watch this story develop. Watching Cecil having inner turmoil with himself and his best friend Kay Hynwen trying to tell him, it's okay to have doubts. The king has been acting weird lately. Watch the story unfold. Watch the story from Final Fantasy 1. I have no idea what's going on with Final Fantasy 1. I know it was based around Dungeons and Dragons. We also didn't get 2 and 3. Okay, so nobody told me that in 1991 that we never got that. Right. We got 2. 2 came to the States. So now I have this great story that's unfolding. I have these characters that I am now emotionally attached to that I didn't have before. Fighter. We call him, what do you get? Rump, because you get 4 letters. You can only get 4 letters, name over 4 or 5. I get Trash. That's the guy I get to name. Great. He's a fighter. He has no purpose. But Cecil is a Dark Knight. Kane, a Dragoon. Best friends. Working for the Baron. The Baron for the Red Wings, the Air Force. Not the Detroit ones, no. The Red Wings of the Air Force, right? Then they get sent into town. They go sent off on an adventure by the king, doubting their intentions. And what do? They blow up an entire town of magic users, magic callers who can summon creatures. I've never seen that in my life. Never have I seen that before. My young adolescent mind is literally on fire right now. Literally. They had to pour water on my head to calm me down. I see GP fighting. You see his inner turmoil with his pick.
No,
right?
I love the story. I'm
looking forward to the part where he gets to Octomam.
I'm looking forward to adult video.
That was way later, and she's a weird lady. I don't want to talk about.
No,
Octomam.
that wasn't that far. It wasn't that much further.
The point is, coming from Final Fantasy 1 and going into 2/4 was a huge jump at the time. So my vote is nearly rooted on its nostalgia and what it made me feel for the series. I liked 1. I was a D&D kid growing up, so I can see the correlation between the D&D stuff and Final Fantasy. But 2 made it understandable. It gave it substance. It gave it something for me to cling on to. No, people die and come back. That's great. That doesn't happen in real life, but it's a fantasy. Don't care. Oh, the 4 fiends or fiends. We used to call them fines because we were terrible with English. But the 4 fiends and the different elements that you had to fight, like the correlation with that. Golbez, as you said earlier, great villain. And then it was my first M. Night Shyamalan moment. Spoiler, Golbez isn't the last bad guy. What? It was mind-blowing. So instead of going off about how much I absolutely hated Tactics, and I think it's a garbage game, and I'm not gonna give it the time of day, Final Fantasy 2 for the Super Nintendo /4 is my vote. Tactics, I'm not even gonna give it any light. You guys took away my perfect batting average. That's fine. I hope you're proud of yourselves.
That's not why I did that.
But
that's
you know
not why
what?
I went against my favorite game.
Yeah.
That's because you get it twice. That's why they don't have 6 in here twice.
That's exactly right.
That's exactly right.
There's truth.
So,
there's truth to that.
I'm sticking to my guns and my upbringing and my cactar. And he and I, this is 2 votes. Screw Sinistar's hat. This cactar and I got it. No, I'm going Final Fantasy 4 because of my nostalgia connection. I hate Tactics. I did not have a good time playing it when I played it. It's awful. It is the Wily Wars of Final Fantasies. Next.
Oof.
Oh.
I'm going to say that when it comes to 4, the music absolutely is better. I would even say, yes, the story is better. But the gameplay and tactics, I think, is far superior. And you know what game did summons better, Chard? Literally every Final Fantasy after 4. Literally every one.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
But as the genesis of the modern
music,
16-bit, yeah.
The music is spectacular. Even the NES version of Final Fantasy 1's music, it was catchy. It wasn't fantastic, but it was catchy. You still could, you're in Matoya's cave, you're walking the world map, those songs, you can hear them in your head right now. And it's the same thing with Final Fantasy 4's music, was just like, it's taking it up a notch. It's
iconic. Yeah.
To
iconic. That point real quick before we go to the next bracket, since Tactics won, Chard, have you heard there's a group out there, they do like heavy metal covers of nerd things, video games and movies, called Power Glove? Not a sponsor. Do you know who I'm talking about?
I have not, but I'd like to check that guy out.
Okay, they do a song called Red Wings Over Baron, and it is a It is a medley of Final Fantasy IV music, and
Ooh.
I'll send you a link after because you
Please
need
do.
to hear this by the end of the night. It's amazing.
I got something
Thank
for
you.
you later too when we're done. I won't get into it, but we'll talk about it after the episode. I got something for you too.
Right on. Okay.
All right. Well, our first bracket tonight in Press B Decides the Final Fantasy series. It's Final Fantasy IV versus Final Fantasy Tactics. Tactics actually wins. I thought we were going to have a tie in this one. I'm pleasantly surprised. All right.
I do feel kind of dirty.
You should.
Yeah.
You're a dirty boy, GP.
Charge streak. His reign of tyranny has been shattered.
My tyranny on what episode?
Yeah, I don't know. Man.
You're just
streak.
mad because they were all Mega Man games and 11 got third place and you don't understand how.
That is a wild accusation and incredibly accurate.
I want to point out that there were 5 of us and Jake also picked 11 to move it on.
If I only knew the pain I would cause to the community by picking Final Fantasy 11 early on, I would have reversed my decision.
You know what? Hey,
look, now you know how Circus Charlie feels. Moving on.
At least now we're not going to have
a ball every time he swung. It's fine.
At least we're not going to have Final Fantasy IV versus Final Fantasy IV. That's the other thing I was worried about. Not important. Let's go.
There you go.
Sorry.
All right. Next bracket is this has our first mystery game. Final Fantasy VII Remake versus Final Fantasy 14 Online.
Yeah.
Have you guys all played online?
Come on.
I know you have, Jared.
Yeah.
I've put like 200 hours into the game. Wolf or GP, have you guys played it? No?
I played it.
You played it?
I played neither.
I played 14.
Actually,
yeah. I played most of the way through the vanilla campaign of 14.
Okay.
Did you play any of the extensions? Or
no. I never got that far.
Okay.
I didn't get to finish all the story in the base game. I wanted to move on to the expansion content, but they're like, no, you have to do this part of the story first before you can set foot there.
Yes.
And I was like, oh my goodness, this is the story that doesn't end.
They changed that actually, but I won't get into that.
Well, I do want to touch on that because that would be my big negative about Final Fantasy 14 Online is that the story was good for the original campaign. But when you got to what was originally the patch content, the gap between the first expansion, was it Heaven's Ward? I think it was. There was like a good 20-hour amount of work, and it is work to get through grindy quests until the expansion. Give me 1 sec, Chart. Give me 1 sec. Hold on. But when you get to Heaven, once you get to Heaven's Ward, the story immediately kicks off and is fantastic. It is some of the best story writing in any Final Fantasy game. And then when you finish the expansion content, you get those patch quests again, and they're a big slog. It's not as bad as the first round, but it's still slog until the next expansion. The story is amazing, fantastic story, and then it's a slog. And that's my problem with Final Fantasy 14 is that in between slog. But the music is freaking amazing. There is such a huge soundtrack for this game. It's criminal. They haven't put it on freaking vinyl. It's so good, and there's so much of it.
They did. You can get
not
it
all
on,
of it, but anyway, Charles, I'll let you talk.
I'm going to premise this because I would like to lay the foundation for this. I don't even remember what the first one was up against this one because it's a no-brainer. The only one that would matter would be 6 at this point. You got to understand something before we really dive deep into 14. And you put Kefka up. That's my favorite fight. Good job, good man.
Yeah.
Way to bounce back from a poor start to this. This choice. So Final Fantasy 14 comes out. It is not a Realm Reborn. It is just Final Fantasy 14 bouncing off of 11, the first MMO of the series. The game is an absolute trash fire. It's dumpster fire. We're talking beyond Cyberpunk 2077 dumpster fire. This is awful. This game has been taken, revamped, and put back out to be the greatest failing success story in the MMO world. This game has been re-released as ARR, or A Realm Reborn, which was the new setup for Final Fantasy XIV, and it brought all that stuff back out. Yes, when you finish the main story and you got to do all the fetch quests, it is a slog, but there's a reason for that. Because they're trying to give you something to do while you waited for the expansions to come out. So instead of just making it simplistic, they made you do a lot of stuff because at the time there's big gaps between the releases. Enter in Heaven's Word. It's not just an expansion where you get a couple of new glamours and a couple new whatevers. The story is phenomenal. You're diving deep into a dragon story from times past and taking care of this, trying to help this castle of people, this area of people try to fight these dragons, and it goes into this really in-depth story for an MMO. I mean, an MMO where you think it's
Yeah.
literally, I'm just going to grab my guild, we're going to go farm some stuff, and we're going to go fight the biggest boss we can fight out there, and then it's done. But it's not. It actually is engaging. It's actually exciting to play. The best part about it as an MMO, I was a big MMO player. The first one I ever played was Star Wars Galaxies, and I played it religiously. And then I went into WoW and I played that for about a year and hated my life and stopped playing it because it is I'm sorry. For those of you who like WoW, I'm sorry. But I'm not the guy that can literally play an MMO every single day of my life. I can't do it. I have a fairly addictive personality when it comes to things like that, and that is not healthy for me. So I try not to do that. 14 doesn't do that to you. 14 gives you the opportunity. I haven't played 14 in probably 2 years. And I was been waiting for Endwalker, the newest expansion, to come out. I can get back in it now, and nothing will have changed. I get to go right into the next story and do all the stuff that goes with it. I don't have to grind anything. I haven't lost track of anybody. It's made to be a casual gamer's MMO, and it's super accessible. And the story is great, and the nostalgia, as you see, as we are fighting my favorite villain in all of Final Fantasy history, you get to fight several bosses from the 6 games. You get to fight the Ghost Train. You get to fight Kefka. You can fight X-Death from 5 and the Tree. You can fight the Void. You can fight Chaos. All the games that I grew up playing was thrown into this, and I could do these raids with my friends. It's the same music from the original games. It's the same like boss patterns. It's the same spells. The nostalgia bomb that this game brings to me easily makes 14 above and beyond the other game that I've honestly completely forgotten because you said 14 and I was like, this is it for me. It keeps going. And I know it's new and it's still, it's 3D and it's got that, it's not the turn-based, but it's the turn-based, it's the MMO fighting style. But it still feels fun to play and it's still exciting. And I've never been excited as an expansion came out as when Shadowbringers came out. And the story that went with that, you actually feel emotion about things going on in an MMO about a story. It's that good. And it's just because it's an MMO doesn't mean that it's fun to play by yourself. I played by myself all the time. I didn't need people to come and help me. And I get randos sometimes, most of them. I'm not saying there weren't some toxic people running around because it's an MMO and the world's big, but most of the people in there are just like, yeah, bro, let's help you out. For example, I played a tank. I was a DPS, damage per second guy. For those of you who don't know, most of you should know that. I shouldn't have to say that, but I was a DPS for a long time. I played a Dragoon. Fucking shocker. But I tried a tank out for the first time. I know, big freaking surprise. I tried a tank out for the first time, had no idea what I was doing, went into a raid, and the whole crew helped me get through it. They're like, oh, do this, help me out. It wasn't annoying. It was like, okay, when you're ready, do this. Are you ready? Let's go. Okay, and we do that stuff. Online, I was like, what? And again, everybody's experience is different on MMOs. I can't say that the same for everybody, but as for me, I picked Final Fantasy 14 because not only is it really, really well rooted in my nostalgia, it also has brought fresh things to the table that has kept it interesting for me, and it is still accessible even after years of not touching it. I can, like I said, I can fire it up, jump back in like nothing changed.
Well, and I should tie in the second game to this, the one that you've forgotten so quickly. So we say Final Fantasy 14 has a lot of fan service for sure. Like Kefka, there's some Nier Automata bosses thrown in there. They grabbed there's a raid from Evilus, which is the tactics world, and I think from Final Fantasy 12 as well. Fan service across the board. All the music. We mentioned Matoya's theme from Final Fantasy 1 earlier. They have a rendition of that in Final Fantasy 14 Online, and it slaps. It's amazing. The music is so great in this, and there's so much of it. It's full of fan service. But you know what's also full of fan service? It's, I would say, the epitome of fan service. When Square announced Final Fantasy VII Remake, they did what I never thought they would do. They took one of their all-time favorite classic games from the PlayStation, 587, and decided to remake it from scratch. I never thought they would ever do that. They talked about it for decades, and they finally did it. And it's, you know what? It's fan service. They took everything from 7's Midgar area, and they expanded upon it with new quests, new content, new storylines, new plot. It's all voiced. The music's been amped up. Like, everything is done from scratch. What they did do is it looks like they took the Final Fantasy 15 work that was done and roughly that combat engine and adapted to 7. It's like the epitome of fan service. So I think that's an interesting matchup for 14, right? Neither one is your standard turn-based battles, really. Both are very dynamic and active. So I think it's an interesting matchup. Wolf, do you, or GP or Wolf, you guys want to comment anything on about?
Oh, I thought you were going to make a choice, man. I was going to.
No.
Everybody needs to talk. Down your throat.
Everybody needs to talk.
Waiting.
I haven't decided yet. Calm down.
So, Wife Wolf is texting me because she's watching, and she asked me, "Was 14 the one I hated when you played it? I about threw you out." And I said, "I don't think so. When was that?" And she goes, "At our last place. Was it 7, the annoying one?" And
it's 7.
I was like,
it is 7 remake.
It was 7 remake.
Yes,
is what she was
you.
talking about. She
wins.
finalized her text with divorce was imminent.
Oh my God.
Wow.
When I was playing through Remake on the living room
I can't
TV.
beat that. You can't beat those odds.
I gotta ask why though, for sure.
Because it's terrible, annoying.
The characters are somehow they made the characters more annoying than they already were. Now, don't get me wrong. 7 was great for when it came out. I have tried to revisit this game numerous times, failed miserably. This is the first time I've actually gone back and started playing through the story. Now, I didn't even finish Remake. That's I think I was in chapter 9 last time I tried, and I've tried this in like 3 or 4 different chunks, and I couldn't do it. Now, 14 I thought was great. They learned their lesson from 11 in a lot of ways, and they actually made an MMO that could be played as a mostly single player experience. You don't have to rely on having a guild. You don't have to rely on playing with other people. And the story is still really good and really engrossing and fits in with the franchise. I thought they did a great job with 14. And it kind of it really respects the classes from the other games that it pulls from. And to do that in an MMO with like the Dragoon, to actually have the jump where you go up and disappear for a couple of seconds and you're, invulnerable to everything while you're gone, come back down. That was amazing to me. That was great. So the fact that it actually represents the Final Fantasy classes in an MMO accurately, and it doesn't detract from the gameplay and it doesn't detract from the lore is great. And I'm with Chard on this. The fact that you can go back and experience all these nostalgia bombs, the fact that it's got the gold saucer. This is the game that made me like Triple Triad. Before this, I hated Triple Triad. I couldn't stand it in 8. In this game, it was good. It was fun. I actually wanted to play Triple Triad in this. Now, I, like Chard, have an addictive personality. I can't play MMOs. If I do, I get way too engrossed in them. So I actually purposely stayed away from playing this with other people. When I played this, I played it by myself, experiencing the story and doing, random groups for the odd dungeon that I did do, because I didn't want to be stuck at the computer for that long, unable to just get up and walk away. I liked that this game let me do that. 14 wins hands down against 7 Remake for that.
Wow.
GP, what do you think? Sounds like you haven't played either one of these.
I haven't. So my guide here is which one am I more excited to try? So my answers are going to be very short, as short of an answer as I can ever muster. So still several minutes long. I want to tip my hat to Chard here for speaking so passionately. The way your input there ended versus where it started, that was a journey and it was fun. I've never really been an MMO person. I think if I were to try any MMO now, it would likely be the number that we're talking about. that I know. 14. It would be 14. Thank you. That said, I love 7. And I was one of those fanboys who was like, oh my God, they're going to do a remake from like the time Final Fantasy 8 came out all the way up until it was officially announced. I was that guy. Anything that had Cloud, there were so many Final Fantasy 7 tie-ins, was it Crisis Core and Dirge of Cerberus and Final Fantasy Tactics. If it had a reference to 7, I was curious. I was excited because I thought that eventually meant they're going to announce something. I drank that Kool-Aid. I haven't played 7 Remake yet. I'm aware of some of the shortcomings from hearing people talk about it. I'm still very excited to try it, but I'm waiting until all the episodes come out. I don't know that I have an addictive personality so much like you guys are saying, but it's just that once I try something that I like, I can't quit. Okay, maybe I do have an addictive personality, but I'm also the person, if there's like a TV show I'm excited about, I won't watch it until the entire series is done. So I am not good with cliffhangers, notoriously. If I watch an episode of something, I'm like, I'm going to be into that. I have to wait until I know it gets canceled or finished so that I can go and just binge all of it. Always been that way. And I got to be that way with 7. And it's tough.
Same way.
And I want to believe that even though it's not the greatest game so far, by the time it's all out and I can go and play it, my patience will have been rewarded. So for selfish reasons, I'm voting 7. And for uneducated reasons, I'm voting 7. I understand that, but that's the boat I'm in.
That's fair.
So I will say, because I haven't really decided yet, when I say that Final Fantasy 7 takes and adds content to the original game, right, they definitely pad it out. I was worried when I first started playing Final Fantasy 7 Remake that it'd be a very short experience because Midgar is only a small piece of the overall game of the original. But they did add some cool stuff. There's a character early on in the game of Final Fantasy 7 called Jessie. People love this character for some reason. I never quite understood it in the original because she only had like 5 lines. But in the remake, she has a fully fleshed out story. She's I wouldn't say a major character, but she's definitely a larger role than she was in the original. And they do that with a lot of characters in Final Fantasy 7 Remake. And it's interesting in that regard. That said, I started falling asleep, like literally falling asleep, I think 8 hours in. It was very early on. If it wasn't 8 hours, it felt like 8 hours. Because in the very beginning, when you just get to Tifa's bar, you're given a laundry list of side quests that weren't in the original. And they're not that exciting. In fact, a lot of ways they feel like bad MMO quests. And this is not an MMO, it's a single player game. And it was really dry. And I was going to skip it and say, I'll come back. But then you get a prompt saying, it warns you, finish the quests that are in your log, or you may not be able to complete them. Are you telling me I'm hitting a point of no return only 6 hours into this game? Are you kidding me? So I fell off it really quickly, which is unfortunate. But it was a combination of not wanting to do all the side quests and the fact that this thing was like, I swear, 70 gigs installed, something ridiculous on my hard drive. And I needed the space for the podcast. So I ended up uninstalling only after a few short weeks. So I never got through it. I never finished it. Much like GP, I kind of want to play this when it's done. But see how much they padded into it in the first episode, and this is going to be a trilogy. That's going to be a long ass game to go through, and I don't think they intend for it to be gone through all at once. So, I mean, there's a lot of great ideas. I'm one of those fans of Advent Children, the movie. I know the movie was not great, but the CGI was amazing. Square's always done great CGI, and seeing the Final Fantasy 7 characters in that movie got me excited for this game. But yeah, it's not quite the game that I wanted it to be. So as excited as I was for it and to play the trilogy, I might just pass on it. Whereas 14 is fantastic. I also quit it after several hundred hours, mostly because I wanted my life back, because I wanted my free time back, because I can't afford to spend 20 hours a week on an MMO, even if it is more respectful of your time than, say, WoW ever was. So my vote would also go for Final Fantasy 14, as much as I wanted to like 7.
Let me clarify a few things here, just real quick.
Yeah, I kind of want to do that too, but
I don't want to be bash guy. You guys expect me to just rip this thing apart because I hated
That's my job.
Remake. I hated it. I like 7 is very polarizing for some reason. And I'm gonna premise this. I say this every time we talk about this. I'm just gonna verbally say this. 7 to me is like the Beatles. Yes, not everybody likes the Beatles. Not everybody thinks their music is great. But you cannot deny what the Beatles have done for rock and roll music. You can't. I know people have told me to shut the hell up about it, but it's the truth. Final Fantasy VII did the same exact thing for the Final Fantasy series. It brought it to a wider audience. More people got into it. And I can't say that without it, it wouldn't be what it is today. Some people may hate that because it kind of went into a weird direction, and 15 and 16 have gone into a really odd direction for people. But I can't say, I mean, if it stayed like that, then the nostalgia bugs like me and Sick Jake, the people that like the turn-based kind of thing might not, it might have gone into its own little like niche thing, but it brought it to a wider audience. It was running on the PlayStation 1 and it looked great. The music is spectacular. And I'll say the same thing about 7 Remake. When I was playing it, as much as I was angry about the overdeveloped side characters like Jesse and like I can't even remember the rest of their names because I hated them so much. They were overdeveloped to me, but I'd be like, you know what? At least the music's good. That was always my claim of, well, at least the music's good. But then I would go to someplace else and I would be in the ghetto of 7 for 4 freaking hours. I was like, why am I here so long? There's so much more to do. And I knew it was going to be broken up. And when I heard it was going to break it up, it upset me. I'm not going to lie. I was like, I get it. There's a lot of gameplay. 7 is a really large game. I get that, but do you really need to be in Midgar for 30 plus hours? Like, does that really need to happen? Midgar's a cool place. Yeah, I get it. It's iconic, blah, blah, blah. But there's a whole nother world out there, and there's a whole nother story out there, and things develop out in Nibelheim and the Sephiroth thing. And there was a lot of stuff, and I don't want to ruin anything for GP, so I'm going to try and make this as spoiler free. There was a lot of extra stuff that they fluffed in there that I was like, what in the heck is this? Who are these guys? Am I playing Kingdom Hearts? Like, where did these people come on? And I'm one of I like Kingdom Hearts for the most part, but I was like, this guy, these things don't belong here. Why is this here? And I felt taken advantage of, to be completely honest with you. I felt like, oh, I guess I'm just giving my money away because I'm going to buy the other ones. And I swore to myself, I was like, no, when I stopped playing it, because I was like, I can't get through this. It is, I'm going to do the old boomer thing. Not my Final Fantasy VII, but it wasn't wasn't my Final Fantasy VII that I liked and I grew up playing back in the day. So it just felt like there was all this extra fluff that didn't need to be there, and it didn't seem poignant to the story to me. So that was my turn off to 7. Everything else, the graphics are beautiful. The gameplay style is actually really fun to play. The music is, I could literally sit and listen to the CD all day with the new revamped songs. I've done it. I've downloaded it on Spotify. Incredible. But it did not get away. It didn't take me far enough away to be like, why am I doing all that? I feel like I'm going to the store to get eggs. Like, I feel like I'm running errands for my house. Like, even when I play an MMO, at least I'm like, I'm going to get something cool out of this. It's like, no, you get to do another errand when you're done with that. It's like, okay. So again, I don't want to turn into a bashing thing because it is a great spin on some things. I just think it's too much for what it is.
I think we need to do a Final Fantasy VII Remake episode. I think we're even just now touching the surface for knowing not a lot about it. I don't think the next 2 installments, because it's just going to have 3 installments. I don't think they're going to fluff it out quite like that. I think they were kind of shoving the waters to see how it was going to be received. So I don't know, but I think we should do an episode about that outside of what we're talking about now.
Can I ask one question from the council, because you guys will be able to answer this? And this is a dumb question, honestly. Is Retrograde, is it Retrograde was the next one that came in with Yuffie? Is that what it's called?
Intergrade.
Intergrade. Yeah, it's Intergrade. Is that considered a DLC, or is that considered part of the series?
That's DLC, or at least they advertise it as DLC.
Is that DLC?
Yeah.
So
I never played it, so I don't know if it's part of the story or not.
It's going to be a 3-part game, but it's got 2 games out already.
Got DLC out, yeah.
No, I think it's still considered part of 7. Just it was
part of the first one.
It was part of that whole mess of like, how do you get your game how you purchased it and all that nonsense. So like, you got Intergrade for free if you paid for the game. You didn't get it for free if you got it on PS Plus or something. So didn't
they push it for the PS5 release too? Was they were like, I think they were pushing it with that coming out.
Yeah, like you couldn't even get it on the PS4. It had to be on the PS5 and now the PC. Like it's
Gotcha.
a huge mess. Like why would you cut off that piece of the game from a chunk of buyers?
Exactly.
I think that's bad move. So Square misstep there. And I was about to give 7 Remake some credit, but now you've made me question that. So
Now
I'm
you've hurt
sorry.
my
I'm
feelings.
sorry. I'm
I'm
sorry.
hurt.
I tarnished it. I tarnished it.
So that's we're two brackets in. Everybody strap in. It's going to be a good night.
now we're
Okay.
3.
But we're not arguing. I think this
No,
is
no,
we're
no,
being very
no.
civil about this.
For now, give it time.
Cactar's not happy, but I'm
Just
okay
wait.
with it.
I'm very close to throwing a tantrum.
All right. Well, okay. So it sounds like then Final Fantasy 14 Online versus Final Fantasy 7 Remake. Final Fantasy 14 takes it 3-1. Moving on. Oh, this one's going to be ugly. Okay. Our next bracket is Final Fantasy 7 on the PlayStation versus Final Fantasy 10 on the PlayStation 2.
Oh.
Um,
Actually, this is a tough one. This is a tough one. But
Yeah.
I know my vote, but this is going to be a tough one.
Yeah.
Who
I
wants to
fully
start?
expect to lose, but it's okay. I went first last time. What do you guys? I'll wait.
GP, you want to start?
I'll caboose it.
This is going to be tough. I have a renewed interest in 10 due to an ongoing conversation I'm having with a cousin of mine who actually had introduced me to Final Fantasy as a kid. And so long as I've known him, he's always been like a huge fan of 2, but a massive fan of 6. And as his life has gone on and evolved and developed, he has found a few things in 10 that have recontextualized the game and life. And so he's really starting to make some very interesting points about how great 10 is. So I'll just go ahead and rip the Band-Aid off. I'm going to vote for 7 because of my own experience, but I'm very hyped for picking up 10 again because I've only ever made it to the lightning field very early on in the game. I tried doing a blind run of this game while I was on Twitch, a couple years ago, and I found that doing a blind run of an RPG is not my forte. I always feel obligated to grind a lot off screen, and I couldn't, do what I needed to do. But I set it down and I haven't picked it up. But in hearing some of the conversations about this game and watching some history of it from YouTube videos and podcasts that are really doing deep dives into these games, I have a renewed interest in 10. I'm going to vote 7 for all the reasons I said about the remake thing, my childhood experience with that, and how much of a game changer it was. So I'm going to vote for 7, but I don't think there's a wrong answer in this one. I'll say
Well, I think there's a wrong answer. The wrong answer is 10. 10 is terrible. I'll be honest. Like, I didn't have a PS2 growing up, so I played this one much later. Actually, I believe I played Final Fantasy 10, the remaster that was out on PC a couple of years back or a year ago or so. I played that one, and props for it being like the first Final Fantasy with voice acting. That's great and all, but the voice acting is terrible. Like early PlayStation, fine, it's still bad. It's awful. I could not stand it. And just I only got maybe 10 hours in, maybe not even that. Like the combat was boring and dull. It didn't feel like it was any different than the earlier games in the 32-bit era. I did not care for the music. I didn't like Titus at all. I hate the way he looks. I think he's just a lame ass crypto bra. Like I was saying offline, if Square finally makes good on their NFT and cryptocurrency bullshit, Titus would be the one to sell it on social media. I guarantee you he'll be their mascot. He is the essence of crypto bro, and I can't stand him for many reasons, including that one. It just, I just fell off so bad. Maybe it's just the dialogue, the story early on. The later Final Fantasy games, the 32-bit era. So 7 has this to a degree too, but I forgive 7 because it's the first of the 3D Final Fantasies. But there's this NPC dialogue, the random NPCs on the maps as you're exploring around. It's pretty lame, pretty dull and boring in Final Fantasy 7, but it got worse in 8. Never played 9, and it got worse, and it was bad in 10. Just the inconsequential, I screwed that word up. The conversations don't matter, and they feel bad. They just feel like out of place. Almost just like, why are they even talking? Like it just didn't feel like it was meaningful to have that conversation. It felt like busy work, and just it didn't hit for me at all. There's nothing I played in Final Fantasy X that says to me that this is a good game worth finishing. I've heard about Blitzball. I've heard about other stuff. I've heard about Lulu and some of the other characters. I will admit, was it Aaron?
You've heard all that from me. It's
Yeah. Is it
Oren.
Aaron? It's not Aaron. Is it
Oren.
Oren?
Aaron, yeah.
Aaron. You done messed up, Aaron.
Slap some homers. No, Oron is fine. His character design looks cool. I've seen him before, and yeah, he looks great. Like I love the whole trench coat covering your face like a turtleneck. That's cool. But I never got that far. I might have seen him, but he was never my party, and I don't know who Lulu is. So all I have on this game is I think Waka I saw, and Titus I think is all I ever saw, and just lame. As much as I shit on like 8, I think if I finished 10, I would hate 10 more than I do 8. To be honest with you, the first impressions were bad. And then on the other hand, you found Final Fantasy 7 on PS1. I mean, that's like a classic. When I was finishing high school, I played that game to death. I loved the hell out of Final Fantasy 7. As warts and all, I mean, going back to it today, yes, the 3D chibi style graphics don't hold up necessarily as well as you want them to, but I think the story and the gameplay was far more interesting. I love the materia system. That's one of my favorite systems in any Final Fantasy game. I like 7 a lot more than 10. 10 to me, it seems terrible, but sure. I'll let you guys talk.
First off, how dare you shit on John Bender Bending Rodriguez DiMaggio? Okay?
Who did he voice? Who
Waka.
did he voice? Did he?
Waka.
Wow,
Yes,
this must have been early because it was pretty bad.
Secondly, when we were talking about when you were talking about the voice acting in 10, now I know you're probably thinking of that laughing scene.
That's one of them.
That laughing scene is them acting like they can overcome something terrible. So they're fake laughing on purpose, out at the ocean, out at Sin, out at the big bad monster. So it's purposely bad because they're not really laughing. You can't shit on bad acting for a scene where it's supposed to sound unnatural and wrong.
I'm driving to Wolf's house and giving him a freaking hug.
It's not just that scene, though.
Yeah.
I never got that far. It's the whole early sequence acting is bad, too. It's early PlayStation voice acting. It's not. I know it's never good, but yeah, I'll let Wolf.
Okay, but I mean, at least in 7, this guy are sick. Are you fucking kidding me? It's not a Game Boy game. It's a PlayStation game. Okay,
that guy are sick.
Also, listen. We're gonna give 7 its due because it's the first PlayStation Final Fantasy, right? Why can't 10 get the same credit of due? Because it's the first Final Fantasy on the PlayStation 2 with the first time there's voice acting. Because it's the first time that its graphics have been improved and the music's been different. It's literally the same thing. It's just a better looking system. That's it. It may not have aged super great, but neither did Final Fantasy 7 right now.
Yeah.
Sorry, Wolf. I had to chime in. You go ahead.
No. That's fine. That's fine.
I've got a whole thing for this. I'm not going to take your spotlight.
So I got to lean to 10 on this one because with 7, I did play through and do everything once, right? Mm-hmm. Everything aside from, I think, beating Ruby Weapon, because fuck that noise. Or maybe, really? Yeah, I think that's the only one I didn't beat, and I don't care.
But that fight are sick. And it do be, okay?
It do be are sick.
Okay, 7 had a lot of great moments, and it was the first time it had a lot of great moments. I have never been able to get out of Midgar in subsequent attempts at that game, ever. Which felt somewhat insulting trying to play Remake, because they were like, let's just leave it in Midgar. Fucking the worst part of the game is a whole piece of the game.
It's like, literally the entire game.
It's but 7 is just, Cloud is such an obnoxious character. He is. I can't stand him. Yeah, and they've tried to recreate him and his emo persona in numerous games since. Cloud, Squall, Lightning. They're all fucking Cloud. And I hate that Square has relied heavily so much on this archetype of a character that's just BS and completely unrelatable.
Yeah.
At least Tidus you can relate to. Like, I get it, because my dad was not around. I have issues with my father. I have since let them go, but playing through this, I got it. Like, his dad was kind of a piece of shit in his eyes because he left, right? I related to that. Tidus was at least emotionally relatable. Cloud was not.
Yeah.
Tidus had angst, yes, and he had daddy issues. Fuck, these days, kind of who doesn't? But
Right.
at least he was relatable. At least he was verbose. At least he said what was on his mind. By the end of Final Fantasy VII, Cloud is let's mosey. Are you fucking kidding me? There is no growth in that character.
Yeah, but I mean that's Seinfeld. The same exact thing. The show ends with the exact same conversation the pilot opened with.
Right,
It's
right.
whatever. I get though. And you're not wrong. Cloud is one of the worst protagonists in the entirety of Final Fantasy, in my opinion. But the supporting cast of characters all have their own attributes that make up for a missing chunk of Cloud. There's no two characters in Final Fantasy VII that are very similar to Cloud because they're all representing a missing chunk of who he would be if he were a normal, well-adjusted person. Kind of like the Rogues Gallery for Batman. Every Batman villain is just another take on the fucked up part of Batman. Same
That's
thing with
fair.
7. Anyway,
But I mean,
sorry.
you can also argue that a very similar thing is going on in 10. Everybody has issues in 10. Yuna's trying to live up to her father, Braska, as the summoner, as a grand summoner. Wakka's trying to replace his lost brother who died to sin. Lulu's trying to also replace Wakka's brother, who they were a couple to. Riku's probably the only one that's like, hey, I'm just here to party, have a good time. She's just a goober, and you're like, she's Al Bhed. But everybody hates the Al Bhed, and she has to hide that from everybody.
Mhm.
These characters also have depth. And like, it's a Wolf's point. I think Tidus is he's a relatable person. Everybody knows somebody who has that same kind of connection. And I'd laugh to myself when people are like, oh, he's such a whiny bitch, whatever. You know what? I'm a whiny bitch. Okay. Admit it. It's on record. It's on record. I whine about shit when things are going bad too. But you know what I do? I try to also poorly laugh about it. And everybody says that, and I'm not trying to beat up on Jake about the cringe laugh scene, but that's a big turning point for a lot of people about how cringy that scene is. It is intended to be that way.
Look,
because shit is bad. It's bad. Hit me.
No, I don't want to keep piping. I've added my 2 cents several times, and I'm not trying to dox myself here, but I am a failed clone experiment. Okay, according to my dad, So in that way, no. Let me get through this. I'm crying. This is emotion. I stole somebody else's identity because I wish I had awesome jet black hair. Antifa. There we are. Thank you. Not
There you go.
Antifa. And Tifa.
And Tifa. I don't know. I like to think of it. When I took a break from gaming for a long time when I was in high school, and I didn't play a lot of stuff, and I couldn't afford a new system. I didn't have a PlayStation 1. I didn't have a 64 or the Saturn or any of that stuff. I missed that whole row. So when I had the opportunity to get a PlayStation 2, I got it. And this was my Final Fantasy love. This was the first game I bought. So I came back into it, fresh out of like the SNES stuff. It took me a while. I had played 7, obviously on like PC and at friends' houses and stuff, but not enough to commit to it because it's a long game. I'm not going to go to my buddy's house and play Final Fantasy 7 every day after school. It just ain't going to happen. So I was out of school. I graduated. I grabbed a PS2 on sale. First game I picked up was Final Fantasy X, and I loved it. A lot of the games come out are very dreary. Admit it. From 6 on, very dreary. Color breaks are pretty brown, pretty depressing. I don't want to say depressing, but they're dark. They're darker than usual. You get this very vibrant game. The color scheme in this game pops. You're just like, Jesus. And I'll also say, and I agree with you, Jake, the music, not super memorable. It is not the greatest soundtrack in the series. I can definitely side with you on that. But the story of as much as you hate it, Titus actually feels like he's coming into his own as the story goes, and he fights his father later on, and he's trying to relate with Yuna, and he's trying to take care of her and help her and protect her like his father did for her father, and all this stuff. There's like a lot of small pieces that fit together in a cog, and they just roll really well together. And I was addicted to this game. I played this game recently. We did everything. I beat Nemesis. I beat all the stuff in the Monster Ranch. We even took on God, I can't even think of it. It was like the biggest fight in the whole game. And right now I'm like eluding the name. The biggest boss you can fight, like the super boss that you got to beat. We took that guy on and beat it. I don't think there's any more I can do. And the sphere grid system, it's a really cool leveling system.
Yeah,
I like the
I do like
materia
that.
system too, but the sphere gets super intuitive. It's easy to track. You don't feel like you're like, I mean, you could go, do I want to go here? Do I want to go to there? And then you start mixing people's stuff. So it's like a job system, because now I can take, like, Kamari is the blue mage of the group or whatever, but you could start taking black magic spells. You go into Lulu's sphere grid and start taking the black magic. And then you could go over to Yuna's spells, start taking some white magic. And you find out that Yuna's like the best spellcaster in the entire game. If you start giving her black magic, she's better than Lulu's stuff, like just because of her points and her stats. There's a lot of really cool side quests that you can do with it. Some are super annoying, i.e. the lightning field and the butterfly chasing, both terrible mini games. But the stuff you get at them is really cool, so it's worth doing. I don't know. I'm 10. I'm voting 10, 100% over 7. It is a very difficult thing because both games are technically coming into the new world of their current consoles and taking the game into another level. You know what I mean? And I'm not going to say that 10 is better than 7 because it's a better looking game. I think I just connect with 10 a lot more, and I think to me, it's a better game out of the two. Not by much. I want to say
Sure.
not by much at all, but 10 and I just connect a lot better than 7 did.
So do we have a
Okay.
tie?
We do. So
Do we need to go to
before
Sinistar's hat for the
before we
breaker?
go to the hat, I want to just talk to you guys. We got a reason as a council. Before we go to the hat, music in 7 versus 10. Do we agree that 7 is better?
Yeah,
I agree
yes.
with. I told you that, but
Okay.
I'm still not changing my
Aside-
decision.
Aside from the opening song in 10, yes.
Yeah, the opening.
Okay.
Oh, Xanarkin. Xanarkin's a killer track, and Sudekune. Oh, it's an amazing song with the
Sutekidane?
CGI.
Yeah. Okay.
With the CGI video. Get out of here.
I was being silly. I was referring to Another World Awaits You.
Oh, okay. I thought you were talking about Xanarkin, the piano track when you first started the game. What about that metal song when you're fighting Titus's dad at the end? That
I think that's the same song, isn't it?
Oh, is that metal? Okay,
I
didn't
believe
know
so.
That sounds
Okay.
dope.
So music,
But yes,
7.
10 did have some great songs. 7 edges it out. Music.
Protagonists, I think you probably agree that Titus is probably the better protagonist.
Titus is better than Cloud.
But side characters is Final Fantasy 7? Okay, Sith,
No,
For
Barrett,
me, yes.
Yuffie. I think
Genova's
7.
Witnesses.
Sid for me, yeah. I mean, come on.
Okay, mini games,
Riku
which has better mini
Waka.
games. 7 with Golden Saucer, Chocobo Racing, the mountain fight thing.
The mountain fight thing.
Yeah. That's
But
what
it's
they
better
called it
than
in the
whatever
game.
10 has. Also, what was 7's big thing was limit breaks and materia.
Mhm.
10's big thing was sphere grid and what?
Had summons, charging up the summon attacks. The summons for calling like Bahamut and stuff made you feel like you were a badass.
I mean,
when you
7
brought
had
Bahamut
that.
down, or you not to this
Bahamut?
caliber.
Oh,
Not to this
Bahamut
level.
Zero
Yeah.
fucking blasting
You
the
got
earth?
Bahamut Zero and Neo Bahamut. I get all that stuff, but you know what?
Yeah.
You actually felt like you were You can control it was a character on the screen. It
Oh, you
wasn't like
controlled
just an
them. Okay.
Yeah,
animation.
it was the
You
character
actually
joined the battle.
Yeah, you got to pick, I'm going to do this, and then it would charge its super attack, and then you could be like, okay, this guy's done. And then you'd hit it with the super attack, and it would do this really cool, overly elaborate Final Fantasy animation where you're like,
I am like that. Yeah.
exactly. You get like 10 shades darker because the screen's too bright and there's all these colors and circles flying around. You're like, it's geometry. It's cool. I don't get it, but it looked amazing. I didn't care.
All right. There's no convincing either of you guys having 10 to vote for 7, huh? You guys have that
Absolutely
out of
not.
about
Nope.
10? No
I
shred
would
of doubt in
take
your minds?
Listen, I would take Lulu 8 days a week, 25 hours a day, 367 days a year over Tifa. Don't at me.
That's a
Yeah,
bad
the
take.
characters in 10, I feel like the characters in 10 have more depth, more
Wow.
relatable issues, and more realistic approaches to the world around them than the characters in 7.
Tifa's got a lot of belts in that skirt too. I mean, sorry, Lulu's got a lot of belts in that skirt. Your pants will never fall down.
My
All right.
gosh.
Are we really a tiebreaker? Are we really going to William Shatner?
I think we need to call
Shahatner.
William Shahatner.
All right.
to step up.
Sinistar in chat. I think you said 10.
He said Agito.
Agito, then he says the hat says
Oh.
10. It wants to put itself on all those colorful heads.
Ah.
And this is what we
Wow.
get for putting our
hat
faith in the
says
goddamn hat.
10.
Fuck.
The
I
hat
don't
wins.
think the hat ever beat 7.
Sinistar,
Hey,
my
hey,
hat
hey.
salutes your hat.
Oh,
If it
Jesus.
sits, it fits. The hats win.
All right, let's just move on.
William
Wow.
Shatner votes 10.
All right.
If you guys aren't going to take this seriously.
Wow. All right. So Final Fantasy X PS2 versus Final Fantasy 7 on PlayStation 1 is a tie, but the tiebreaker, this goddamn partnered sentient hat, which we got to show you guys pictures of later. It shows Final Fantasy X.
I revoke the naming rights to my next kid away from the hat. The hat no longer gets to choose that. And yeah,
Alright.
even though he beat me at one-on-one basketball, 11-8, I still feel like, he's a dick.
All right. Final Fantasy, the next bracket, Final Fantasy 9, PlayStation 1 versus our second mystery game, Final Fantasy 8 Remastered. Now we're running long on time, so I'm just going to say, before you shit all over Final Fantasy 8 Remastered, I can't stand Final Fantasy 8. Everybody knows this. But the remaster definitely spruces up the graphics, and it also settles some of the things I had issues with, which is mostly the grinding pace. The remaster has fast forward. That's my number take. Also, Final Fantasy 8 has my favorite minigame of all time.
Skip ahead.
Yeah, well, there you go. Skip through things. Final Fantasy 8 has triple triad.
Skip ahead, like to the end.
Oh, well. Triple triad is one of my favorite
itself when
minigames
it's
of
done.
any Final Fantasy game. I love it in 14, but I liked it in Final Fantasy 8 as well. That alone always has a soft spot for me. If I play 8 again, it's mostly because I want to play triple triad in the original form. I would actually play it again with this. The graphics look better. The music was always a jam in FF8. And you can see Squall's eyes in the remaster. They spruced up the graphics. It's not the mess of the pixels anymore. You can actually see a face. I also like the characters
guy
in it.
here.
Yeah. But that said, I have not played 9. So
the guy your woman tells you not to worry about.
All right, I'll start this one.
all right.
I gotta go 9 on this one. I like Tetramaster better than Triple Triad. I like the gameplay mechanics better than 8 in 9. I like the story in 9 better than 8. I like the aesthetic of 9 better than 8. I like the music of 9 better than 8. Everything about 9 is better than 8. Even if you make 8 pretty, it's still a pretty pile of shit. It may be rainbow shit, but it's still shit.
I could wrap my shit in some really pretty paper.
So 9.
I'm going to follow up, and I'm going to make this quick. You guys are going to be blown away. You all know how I feel about 8. Even the remaster. I played the remaster actually quite recently. But I'm gonna go on the positive side of things. I'm gonna tell you what, I actually did not play 9 when I was growing up because 8 was that bad. And I was really disappointed with the way 8 played. And I was like, 9 can't be any better. We're going in a really crap direction. Because to be honest, coming off of 7 and going into 9, coming off of 7 and then going into 8, you're like, what in the heck just happened here? What happened to me? Where is my game? This is not the game I just played 7. 7 was incredible. What is this? And then I went, I can't imagine it getting any better than this. So I just left it alone. So a couple years back when I did my run, I played 9. So you know what? I'm going to give it a shot because a lot of people said good things about it. I'm going to put aside my absolute disdain for 8, and we're going to give 9. And I'll tell you what, 9 might have been the very end of 9. We're going to bear the soul a little bit here. I almost cried on stream at the end of 9. It got
Wow.
me choked up at the very end of 9. Spoiler alert, when he pulls the cloak off during the play, I was like, this is so cool. The characters are great. The music, I like 8's music better than 9's. That's the only thing in 8 that I'll say nice about it. And I also like Triple Triad better than Tetra. But the thing about Tetra with Triple Triad, it felt like I enjoyed playing it, so it didn't bother me as much. But there's that small section of Triple Triad where you're just like, okay, you just have to get through that and then you're done. You never have to play it again. But the story is fantastic. The characters are awesome. The artwork is actually really good. And I think it's overlooked because it was a PS1 game, but they did the kind of the cute. I guess it's not chibi, but it's, that's the smaller, more cartoony, more fantasy looking characters. What do you think, chibi? Okay. I didn't want to call it what it wasn't, but I would say it's more chibi compared to the more adult look of 7 and 8 prior to that. And it also goes back. It takes away a lot of the Midgar technology and the garden technology that we got in 7 and 8, and it takes you back into more of an olden time, swords and daggers and magic and all that stuff. And I kind of liked how they took that angle of it being old school. Yes, you still get the airship and you get all that stuff, but I don't know. 9 was a really story I was super invested in. The last boss is really freaking weird. I think Wolf and I talked about that once ago, a long time, where it was like, who the heck is this guy? But it's still really neat, and I really like all the characters, and I really like the story. And even if 8, I know I'd pick anything over 8. You guys know that. But instead of just taking my minute to just destroy 8, which is what I'm sure a lot of you expected me to do, I would like to actually praise the game that it's up against because, never. I really, really I think it's like a steampunkish, I like the steampunkish look of 9. So 9 hands down without question.
All right, so I'm going to go with 9. I played it when it first came out, and that's the only time I've played it through. You talk about your all-time kind of course corrections. I think 9 is the epitome of, we messed up. Here's what we should have done. That said, and I'm not going to get too deep into this because the episode that we've covered this before season 2 with us, and everybody here now started. We, toward the end of season 1, did an episode with a guest, Captain High Five, who's a friend of mine that I really respect as a gamer. And she had taken over the Final Fantasy duties from me because I played 1 through 7. And then she started up with 8, the remaster, right after that came out. And between that podcast, watching her stream that, and kind of paying more attention to 8 than I ever really had before, it won me over a bit. I certainly don't rank it nearly as lowly as I used to. I think 9 is still the much better game. But I'm with Chard. Instead of crapping on 8, I think people should go back and try it again if they haven't recently. But 9 is still going to win. So I'm with you.
I even gave 8 another shot. I even played the remastered from start to finish. Yes, it was a community challenge that was done for a charity, but I still played it and I still did not care for it.
I forgot you played the remaster for that. Yeah.
And if you do it right, you can front load, you can overload and way OP yourself very, very early on, which is the thing I'm going to talk about here in a later bracket. I am of the type of person who will heavy grind as soon as possible so that the next while will be easy. So if you do that with 8, the rest of the game is kind of forgettable because that level of difficulty is not there. And as a kid, I used to enjoy that. The side of me that was like, oh, cool, Game Shark or Game Genie codes that'll immediately take you to level 99. That's great. Let's do that. But as I've kind of matured as a human being, I and as a gamer, don't really care for that quite so much. So that's another strike for me against 8. So,
okay.
Anyway.
Wolf, what do you think?
Oh, I already said it was 9.
Oh, okay. All right.
He had a lot
I
of
went
very
on- I-
amazing points.
Yeah, I was just
did.
too quick and succinct about it, I guess.
Yeah,
People
I think
No, but
cried.
also-
Jake.
I drug
on
it
top
out.
of
Yeah,
that,
I wept
Let-
openly.
One more thing in
I
Nine's
wept.
favor is it has the character with the best philosophy of any Final Fantasy character. There are two types of things in the world: things you can eat and things you cannot.
That's a good way of thinking in life. Yeah.
So you like that better than there's a giant horrible adversity in front of me. I'm going to go laugh at the ocean. Come on, no.
That's not the bracket.
This is
We'll get
8,
there.
not
Hey,
10.
that
Yeah.
I'm
line,
still sure.
that
Oh,
line are sick.
yeah,
Alright.
that argument are dope.
I like that better than, I forget about all you people, even though I've known you since my childhood.
Yeah, I'm still not sure that I follow 7 very well, but I get anyway. That was another bracket.
Yeah, 8's story is not great. I've complained at length about the story in 8. I don't like it either. I just figure we give it a good honest shot because up against 9 is
I'm
a
glad
tough
it's in
call.
there.
And like I had never
deserves
even
it.
played 9, and I'd still vote for 9. I don't like
Oh,
8
wow.
that
Yeah.
much.
Wow.
All right, so Final Fantasy
So 9
9 or
wins.
Final Fantasy 8 for sure. That's like sounds like 4-0. So that's moving on. Our third last bracket, or no, second last bracket is Final Fantasy 4 on the DS versus Final Fantasy Tactics Advance on the GBA. GP, how about you start this one? Because Final Fantasy 4 on the
This is
DS, I
his-
think, was
yeah,
your
this
thing.
is his area.
It is very well documented at this point how I feel about 4. I feel like the DS version is the best version of that game. I haven't played it on the DS in some time. However, I do have it on my phone. And the iOS version will even ask you if you want to play easy mode or hard mode, which I think is great. I don't remember the DS version doing that. But the augment system, the 2 New Game Plus, and then New Game Plus Plus is cool. But, and this is what I was mentioning at the previous bracket when I said I'm the kind of person who will overgrind at the beginning so the rest of the game can be a little bit easier. Today, I just played through 4DS on my phone with the New Game Plus, ran it and beat it in 6 hours, just over that. But I did it with Cloud. I did it with Cecil only. So the previous game, I got the adamant armor. I did a full set of onion, equipment. Started up, kill everybody on your team who's not named Cecil. Do all the. I mean, anyway, you can beat it in 6 hours. It's way too easy. The augment system makes it so easy to get OP'd, but fuck, it is fun. I'm sorry, I love it. By the time you're done, you feel like the second time you haven't accomplished anything. But that first playthrough, where you're trying to uncover 100% of all the maps, you're trying to strategize how you're going to do the augment thing. It's so good. And as far as Final Fantasy stories go, I love the story for 4. The voice acting on the DS is great. Edge, in particular, gives a great performance. Kane's voice, Golbez's voice, 2 of the sexiest things I've ever heard. I don't mind saying that. And I just, I've got this big, tattoo over my left shoulder that is just like that Golbez cover of Final Fantasy IV.
Oh, the
Yes.
artwork. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm such a fan, and this is my favorite version of the game. I'm going to go for, hands down. That said, the other game, who again I remember it is and was paying attention.
Tactics
Not as good.
Advanced on the GBA.
Yes,
Yeah.
I know. No, it exists. It's good.
I'm glad it's not just me.
No. But that's me. 4DS, and I'm sorry to Tactics Advance. There's probably no other game on the bracket that was going to stand a chance for me against 4DS. So that's my piece, and I will climb up now.
Well, let me defend Tactics Advanced because
And one more
random
thing.
brackets. Oh,
Okay.
Go ahead.
There was no one more thing. I troll.
Uh-huh. Today on. All right, Tactics Advance. I mean, I said my piece about Tactics on the PS and the PlayStation. Everything I loved about the gameplay in PlayStation 1 over this game, I love even more in the GBA version. Plus, the story in the GBA version is completely different characters. You're a boy who, I think you fall asleep and you end up in this mystical world. I mean, it opens up with a snowball fight to introduce you to the mechanics. That's why I like it so much. But basically, you're in a mystical world. It's this really cool map system where you can customize points. I believe you can drop them down. If I'm not wrong, it's been a while since I played. But the world is more. Go ahead, Chard.
Quick question: wasn't wasn't it a video game that they thought they were in? Like, correct me if I'm wrong, because I thought they were playing like something like that, and then he fell asleep and was in the game that they were talking about.
I think it's they were playing a
uh,
schoolyard game,
It
and
was
then that's where you get the idea from, because they're doing the snowball fight in the beginning, right?
Right,
But
okay,
yeah, the story is a
and
lot more
I thought it was
whimsical.
a book.
Oh, it might have been.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm
It's a
sorry.
book.
I thought that was a cool thing.
Yeah, but like the story is more lighthearted. It's a little more fun, a little more fantasy-ish, right? There's a lot more races in the game. There's different. I can't pronounce them. There's bunny girls. Then there's these weird dog things, and then there's these weird lizard people, and then there's Moogles. Yeah, there's like 3 or 4 of them. They all have slightly different classes, and there's like easily a dozen classes in this game. Everything from white and black mages to fencers and samurais, and everything you'd want is in this game. Again, the job system I love so much gameplay wise. You can customize your characters quite a bit. It's just fantastic. And it's everything I loved in the original, but with a more lighthearted and fun story. Also, the graphics for the GBA, pretty damn good. I mean, it's not the PlayStation, so it's not 3D, it's sprites, but I like sprites. It also has a really cool judge system, a yellow and red card system to help restrict what you can use during matches. If I remember right, if you use something that's a yellow card, you get a strike, but you have limited use of it, and then red is outright banned. It's limiting, but it's limiting in a fun way that makes the battles cool. Just that with the characters, this game's great, and it's all in the Game Boy Advance. So I played this on the go. I played this mobile, and that's why I loved it so much. This is one of my favorite games on the Game Boy Advance. Something tells me you guys may not be as into it as much, but I really did like this one a lot. Final Fantasy IV. I did not play the DS one. It is on my list of things to play, but I've heard GP gush about it, and I did watch the cutscenes. And if you're watching the video version of the podcast, the video he picked does list off the movies and shows you the movies, and they look really cool. They look really cool, honestly. It's 3D cutscenes for Final Fantasy IV. Like that alone, it's the same level as, well, there's cutscenes added to Final Fantasy VII. It feels like that. It looks really good. So, and then the voice acting is kind of neat. But again, I've never been the biggest fan of 4, and I like the lighthearted story in Tactics Advance a lot more. So my vote was Tactics Advance. I think the game is great. If you guys haven't played it, or it's been a while, give it another shot, especially if you liked the other Tactics games, because I think this refines all the great parts of Tactics on PlayStation and improves it in the Game Boy Advance version. And like this is the one to play. But who else wants to speak? Wolf?
I'll go.
Yeah, you go.
Yeah, 4DS, hands down. I tried playing Tactics Advance back in the day, and I just could not get into it. I didn't like for the pace of the gameplay at the time I was playing. It felt slow. It didn't feel it didn't look, it's more vibrant, but it didn't look as pretty as Tactics for the PlayStation. So I was let down there. I honestly don't remember the music for this game one bit. I just don't. I remember not being wowed by it though. Like that's where I was. And 4 is my favorite game. Like I've said before, just like GP. And 4DS got to re-implement a huge chunk of story that got left on the cutting room floor in the original release. And the fact that it was there and it expanded on so much of character motivations in this game, it really nailed the experience for me. 4 for the DS, I think, is the definitive version of 4. And with the voice acting, with the added content, with everything, it's great. This is definitely, it wins against Tactics Advance. It's that simple.
Well said.
Jake, I'm sorry. Jake,
drive the stake deeper inside.
I want to premise this with, obviously, I didn't care for Tactics on the PlayStation 1, which is whatever. So I was very reluctant to play Tactics Advance that was suggested to me by a viewer. And to be honest with you, I really actually liked it. I did enjoy it. I was like, oh, okay, this is a little bit better. Maybe it was the mood or the system I was in. I don't know. It felt easier and it was fun to play. But I'm sorry, Jake. Final Fantasy IV is one of my at least top 3, easily top 2 games, easily.
You got a lot of games in that top 3 there, Chard.
I only have 3.
You sure?
Plus 1 or 2. No, two. I mean, four is fantastic, and what like they said, there was big chunks of the story that they took away and they batted back that made sense, and they also added a difficulty spike into the game that made that game much more difficult and challenging to play through. Final Fantasy 2 on the Super Nintendo in the Americas is easy mode. It's easy mode. It's easy to breeze through. You can grind up real quick and get it done, but you feel like you're rushing through it. You feel like you're missing a bunch of chunks.
Yeah.
Why is this going on? Why is he acting like this? But they take the game, they put 3D sprites in it, which are cool for what they're coming out of, right? They add stuff to the story. We're like, oh, this character now has depth that he didn't have before. Holy crap. The music is improved upon it. I still love all the characters. It's not fair to put that up. It's like putting Final Fantasy 6 and Final Fantasy 6 Pixel Remaster up against anything. It's just I'm gonna go with 4. It's a great game, and they just made a good game better. Final Fantasy 7 can learn from this because not only is it one game with everything in it, but it's still better.
Yeah.
So Final Fantasy 4 for the DS is my vote easily.
Oh, it hurts so much. It hurts. That's okay. I get it. Honestly, I know Final Fantasy 4 at some form or another was going to make it up into the next round because I know how iconic that game is. I did not expect the DS version to be the one, though. I will say that. But I mean, there's a reason why Final Fantasy 4 is the one that had all the remakes and ports and various iterations, because I understand it is a beloved story, so that's fine. I can live with that. Final Fantasy 4 versus Final Fantasy Tactics. Final Fantasy 4 DS wins. Our last preliminary bracket, as I'm trying to move us through, Final Fantasy 1. Speaking of Pixel Remaster versus Final Fantasy 6 on the Super Nintendo.
Oh,
That's tough. That might be a slaughter. What do you guys think?
Is it though?
Is it?
I don't know.
Come on.
I think it's tough.
Final Fantasy 6 is obviously one of the
Yeah.
It is the best 16-bit Final Fantasy, bar none. And I would argue Final Fantasy 6 is one of the best, if not the best, Final Fantasy, period. As much as I love Final Fantasy 1, that remaster, what's it, diagonal movement and shitty font? What makes it better than Final Fantasy 6? Come on. Like, really?
I don't think anybody's saying anything makes it better than 6. And I'm the one who wanted to put Pixel Remaster of 1 on the list, and I'm going to go with 6. I mean,
okay.
There's only so many things you can say about 1, but people are still finding new ways to enjoy and play through 6, even the classic version on the SNES. So, yeah, we will always talk about 6. 1, great for what it is and what it accomplished, and I'm grateful it exists and still is relevant, but it's not going to touch 6 all the way.
Yeah, you could have put 1 up against almost any other game in the system, and it might have had a chance to at least have been talked about. But if you're going to put it up against the greatest Final Fantasy in the entire system,
it's a victim.
Even the Super Nintendo, it's a victim. It can't go any better. Best music out there, best characters, best story, best villain, best sprite graphics, best magic animation, best call. I mean, the list is too long, and in the essence of time, easily 6. There's no question about it.
Who remembers the commercial for Final Fantasy 3 for North America?
What the
in the words of Mog, casting the monsters next, because 6 wins.
6 wins, yeah.
And I like 1. I do. It was my first Final Fantasy. I mean, it was everybody's first. Well, it was the first Final Fantasy. But all right, thank God. At least one of them. Final Fantasy 6 beats Final Fantasy 1 Pixel Remastered. I was worried. You guys got me on edge. Semi-final brackets. Maybe this will go fast. We'll try.
They usually do after the first round.
Yeah.
Final Fantasy Tactics, PlayStation 1 versus Final Fantasy 14 Online. That's hard for me.
I'm just going to say 14. I'm just going to go with 14. The reason I picked 14 is because it literally has everything in it, including storylines from Tactics. So you can get both, plus a bunch of other stuff to go with it. So
No. Okay. I love you and I respect you, Chard. But Goulash, 14 is Goulash.
It is. It's got a lot of crap in it. I get it.
Yeah. And Tactics is corn and goulash. I'm about to call tactics corn. I'm going to assume
There
corn's
could be.
and goulash. Okay,
Why
so
don't you just call it a
tactics.
chowder?
Sure.
There
I'm
you go.
just saying I'm going to go with tactics, largely because I haven't played 14 and I'm not a big MMO person. My vote's going to be for tactics for basically the same reasons as it was in the first round. But I get what you're saying. But just because something has everything doesn't make it better than the sum of its parts.
But if it has all the things, so
But standing against your own logic, Chard, if you remember, it was Mega Man 2 versus Wily Wars.
yeah, but
Wily Wars
is trash.
has
Oh,
Mega
that's
Man
not
2,
oh,
and Mega Man 2
I would
still
like to
beat it.
report a burn.
So,
Yeah, but let me tell you this: if you were to take Final Fantasy Tactics, which I already don't like, and then throw it in a what's the word I'm thinking? Underwhelming system, and then two other games, and also make those underwhelming as well, and take all the things that I like about it out, and then release it and try to sell it to me like I'm an idiot, then yes, you're right. But unfortunately, that's not the case with 14. They actually improve upon everything and put it back out there. But I like the dig. That was good. That was a good one. That was good.
I have to go with tactics on this as well. 14 wasn't bad, not by a long shot. It was actually pretty good, but I think tactics still has that soft spot in my heart, mechanically, story wise, everything it touched on. Especially, it was 97, 98, something like. It's probably 98 actually.
97, same year as Final Fantasy 7, actually, which is wild to me.
Was it?
Yeah.
Wow.
All right.
Jake
can get a good night's sleep tonight. We can give him that tonight.
Hold on. Are we gonna have to go to the
sacrifice too?
Well,
at 10 years old, when I was
I know, right?
At 10 years old is when I first played Final Fantasy 2. That blew my mind for what a story could be for a video game. And when you got to tactics, some 7 years or 5 years later,
only 5 years separates us two.
5 years later, it again blew my mind as to the depth of a story for a video game, because it did go much deeper than any other RPG I had played up to that point.
But like the elves in the or like the dwarves in the mountain of Moria, they dug too deep, and the Balrog came out because there's too much in that game. There's too much. But I'm not going to fight it because I know I'm going to lose this fight, so I'm not even going to waste my breath. But just like the mines in Moria, do you see what the dwarves did? Do you see what they did? They summoned a demon from the dark, from the deep, of fire, shadow.
And to Final Fantasy 14, I shall say, you shall not pass.
Well, I haven't said anything yet. So when I look at these two games,
pick this, I'll be fucking shocked. I'm just
so like I love. So when I look at, like I said, I keep saying the job system is something I love so much, and Final Fantasy 14 has that. But the difference is in tactics how completely customizable it is, the job system. Whereas in the MMO, you're very much locked into the same build as everybody else. If you're a white mage, your white mage almost always will look like every other white mage in that game. Maybe not in the beginning when it first came out, but it's certainly that way every time I play it today. If you want to be a tank and you're the fighter job or what the hell that job is, you're almost exclusively locked in the same build as everybody else. Even the rotation of skills is set in stone practically in Final Fantasy 14, and I didn't like that. That said, Final Fantasy 14, I have put hundreds of hours into. The story is far better than Tactics. The graphics are amazing, and the music, there's dozens and dozens of hours of music in 14 that is utterly freaking amazing, and it blows Tactics out of the water. I love Tactics. If this was the GBA version, this would be harder for me because I do like the Tactics gameplay. And despite the bad implementation of the job system in online, everything else in online I like more than Tactics. So my vote is for Final Fantasy 14 Online. So we're tied again.
Let's go to the hat.
We have to resort to the hat again?
Let's go to the hat.
What does the hat say, Sinistar? Tactics or Final Fantasy 14 Online?
F it, we'll do it live. We'll do it live.
Or Sinistar fall asleep. It's enough of our bullshit.
Yeah. If he's not there, we're going to have to do some sort of unofficial poll or pick this one up at the beginning of the next episode, revisit it. Oh, here it goes. Which has better heads, Tactics, all the way.
To wear hats on, you have several hats. And I'll tell you what, Jake, to defend and to argue against and for 14, somehow I'm doing that. It's all about that glamour game, baby. It's all about
Yeah.
that glamour. You get the
Customization of
best
your
armor
look,
in the world,
yeah.
and then you can just your look. You don't have to look like that. You can literally walk around in shorty shorts and be a tank, and no one would know the difference.
That's what I do. You
So
totally
I would
customize the way you
say-
look, and there's millions of heads to wear hats, Sinistar. So 14, I
That's
think,
what I'm
has more
saying,
heads.
Sinistar. I'm thinking 14 has a lot more options for heads.
Look,
Tactics
I
doesn't even
think
have hats.
Tactics did more for hats historically than any other Final Fantasy. I don't think anybody.
When
Tactics
people die
also
in
has-
Tactics, their heads go away, so they can't be worn anymore because there's
Tactics.
But their
I
hats
want to.
remain.
I know this doesn't have to do with heads, but Tactics has one of the worst insults to ever grace a script of any video game. When Algis or Argith or whichever version you're referring
You don't
to
even know his name.
insults Rams. No, he's got no. In PS version, his name was Algis, and in PSP, it was Argath.
Yeah, he's
They
right.
fixed the translation.
All right.
That's why I'm saying whatever version.
Sinistar Cell said 14.
He actually goes and insults Ramza, not just as a person, but he, in the same insult, calls his dad a slut, his mom a simpleton whore, and that he was conceived in a gutter. Like,
But his dad are a slut.
just like Tactics. So
It's not
14
going away.
wins. Let's
It's
move
not
on.
going. Yeah, Sinistar, you and I are going to have a
14
conversation later. You're not going to enjoy.
14 are the winner.
Praise be the hat.
14
Okay.
are the winner.
All right.
Praise be the hat.
Next one,
Tactics
Final
doesn't
Fantasy.
need a subscription payment.
Praise be to the hat.
Oh, it's cheap though. Final Fantasy 10 versus Final Fantasy 9. I don't have a hat in this race to keep the pun going. So, what do you guys think? Like,
All
I would
right,
say maybe
I'm gonna go
9
first.
if I had to vote, because 9 is the one that I would like to play. And having played a little bit 10, not liking it, 9 at least goes back to the style of characters I like from 6. And I think I'm more interested in the world of 6 versus that. Like Final Fantasy, the newer ones, has this problem with sci-fi mixed with fantasy a bit too much. It's too much on the nose. Final Fantasy 9 is strictly steampunk, and I think that appeals to me more. So my vote is Final Fantasy 9.
All right. So
I-
Final Fantasy 9 for me. I'm sorry, Werewolf. I'm sorry. If you
No,
want to
go
go,
ahead, go
yeah.
ahead.
Okay.
I just wanted to touch on the sci-fi thing real quick because 9 does have a touch of sci-fi toward the end,
Okay.
but
it does
it
that.
is mostly very fantastical steampunk, like
Okay.
98%.
No, fair point.
I'm gonna go. This is tough. So 9 is a spectacular game. 9 was a sleeper. I was not expecting 9 to come out and be the way that it was, coming off of 8. So it really bounced back the series for me out of what 8 could have easily tanked and made me not want to do anything anymore. 9 resurrected it for me and breathed life back into it. But I have to go with 10 because of my relationship with the game, because of my nostalgia and connection to the game, and how much I truly enjoyed playing literally everything, all the way down to the hardest super boss in the game, and literally grinding for hours on stream to beat the super boss at the end of the game. So I have to go with 10. 10's gonna get my vote, but that is not an easy one to win for me because 9 is an excellent game.
I have to go with 9 on this one. I think 9 is just, it's more whimsical, it's more fun, it's got some jazzy tunes. 9 takes it for me against 10. And again, just like Chard, this is a close one, but I think 9 edges out 10 in this one.
And I respect that, honestly. It's a tough matchup. GP's
Okay.
the breaker. What do you
Well,
got?
no, 9's going to win, I think, and here's why. Like I said, I played 9 all the way through, but I only played it once, and it was when it first came out. I have yet to finish 10, but for me right now, the hype is there to do so. So I can't really speak to anything except for 9 because I've had that experience. So I've got to go with 9, although I don't have a desire to replay it. I feel like I loved it, but I took it as far as it can go. I don't know that it's going to have replay value for me. But again, I don't have the full picture of 10, so I think I'm duty bound or honor bound to say 9. So 9 will take it.
That's fair.
Okay. All right. Final Fantasy 10 versus Final Fantasy 9. Final Fantasy 9 moves to the finals. Our last semi is Final Fantasy IV DS versus Final Fantasy VI on the SNES. For me, this is the easy one. It's Final Fantasy VI, hands down. But again, I have not played much. I haven't played the DS version, and I'm not a fan of Final Fantasy IV to begin with. But it's up to you guys.
Haven't we had this conversation before? I feel like this is
Are we deja vuing?
deja vu.
Yeah.
I don't want to go last because of the way the last bracket just happened. Not surprisingly, like with Jake, not surprisingly, I'm going to go with 4 for the DS. 6 is a better game. I think the Game Boy Advance port of 6. Oh God, I don't know. 6 is a better game. 4 is my favorite for the DS. I'm going to go with that. But again, this one's tricky. And it's one of those ones where whatever's going to win, I'm not going to be surprised. But if I had to choose right now, which would I rather play? I'm going to go with 4 for the DS.
6, hands down. I don't
Okay.
even need an explanation. 6 is the greatest, in my opinion.
Are we leaving this to the hat? Oh my God.
No, we can't. We have to figure this one out. We have to. This is 4 versus 6, even if it is different forms.
As much as I love 4, I do always say that 6 edges it out mechanically. In terms of mechanics, I think 6 did it better than 4, and it had the longer, more engaging experience, even if sometimes it could be a little drawn out at places. And plus, I mean, the villain wins. It's not about
It's a
beating the
story.
bad guy. It's about living
Moving on.
through what he's done to the world.
So awesome.
So as much as I like deep down, I want to be 4. I can't. I gotta go 6.
To your point, it's about living through what the bad guy has done to the world. 4 is about a character living through what he has done to the world. You know, when he goes back to Mysidia to, you know, as a Dark Knight to become a paladin, he is shamed and he is shunned, especially in that DS version. And he's like, no, I see the error of my ways. I don't know how to tell you. I wasn't comfortable with this to begin with, but the good guy is the bad guy for the first part of 4.
But and I will agree with that sentiment, but in 6, when shit hits the fan, it stays hit.
Right.
The fan stays messy. In 4, when shit hits the fan, by the next time you see the fan, it's all cleaned up and pretty and shiny.
Rewind.
It's like nothing happened. So
I mean, explain as a child, maybe not a child, but at least a preteen, watching the world get destroyed in front of your eyes, going, "Wait, I was there to stop it. What's going on? And is that the end? Did I screw it up?" And the stress that comes with, did I fail? Do I have to do that again? And then having to live with the consequences that a psychopath did and move on from that it's a level in my head. As a at that time, being as young as I was, to like people are, wow, this is like too real. This is too real. What if it actually happens?
I have gotten emotional at the end of 6.
Mm-hmm.
And it packs a bigger punch. I agree. Having grown up watching Rocky movies, I'm a big fan of redemption arcs. So again, I can't really argue against 6. All I can do is profess my love for 4.
Fair.
So,
That's fair. So 6 wins?
6, yeah. All right. So then our finals, we got to give bronze, silver, and gold. The finalists are Final Fantasy 14 Online. That's honestly unexpected, but I'm glad it's there. Final Fantasy 9 PS1. That's a good one. And Final Fantasy 6 on the SNES.
Disgusting.
I think
this is not how this should have gone.
This is not even hard
at all. No.
Well,
clearly bronze
is 14.
Yeah.
I can't imagine this playing out any other way than 4 or 6, 9, 14.
Agreed.
Gold through bronze.
In the library with the candlestick.
I think 14 would be better than 9. The amount of story and music and graphics and gameplay in 14 is fantastic, and it's definitely more value for the player. Like, honestly, 14 and 6 are very close for me as number 1. The only reason why it's different for me is that 6, like you said, GP, I had emotions at the end of 6. Final Fantasy 14, not so much. As much as I enjoyed the story sequences, I'll admit the first part of Online is not the greatest, but Heaven's Ward onward, is some amazing storytelling, and it's something to play through. I just wish it wasn't as long to get there.
Have you played any of Shadowbringers yet, Jake?
No, I haven't gotten that far.
Okay.
I did Desert Song, I think the desert themed one I did with the Alamigo stuff and the downfall of that and some of the characters involved there. Yeah. It's really fantastic storytelling, and it's really great. But 6 would be gold.
The end of Shadowbringers will actually enlist some emotion from you.
Really?
It's actually very, very touching at the end. But I'm with the guys on this. I have to go 6, obviously gold. There's no question about that. Yeah. That is completely unanimous on that. I feel like Wolf may tell me to fuck off, but I don't think so. I'm going to go with 9 as silver. And the reason I picked 9 as silver over 14, and I'm sorry, Jake, is because 9 is a complete game fleshed out with a start and an end, and it elicited emotion from me that I did not anticipate having when I finished it. I was like, damn, it really actually, I choked up. I didn't even choke up at 6, which has a very, very touching and very like engaging story. It's just the whole thing is the setup to the end. You don't really know what's going to happen. And then you get that spin and you're like, everything's going to be okay. And it's almost like a breath of fresh air from the ending of that. And you actually are like, I felt happy. I was like, holy shit, this is a really cool ending. And 14 is an ever growing amoebic story that's going to constantly change and shift and shape. And who's to say that Endwalker, which it's not going to, could totally bomb. It could be terrible. I don't know what's going to happen next with that because it's never going to end. They're going to just keep putting stuff into it because it is a cash cow and it's a great game. Don't get me wrong on that. But I mean, Shadowbringers was a fantastic ending and a really great expansion. And honestly, if they had been like, okay, we're done with Shadowbringers here on, I think that would have been a great ending to a game. But since they keep pumping stuff out, I don't know what's going to happen. So what I say now could differ from what I say in 6 months. Whilst I know how 6 ends and I know how 9 ends, that will never change. Or my experiences with that will never change because of what I experienced with them in the past. So
I had heard that Endwalker is the end of whatever story they're telling, and anything after that will be a brand new cast of characters. I had heard that. Whether that's true or not, I mean, who the hell knows? But honestly, that's a good point. You're right. I mean, Final Fantasy, we joke, is the game that series that never ends. It's fitting that Final Fantasy 14 never actually ends. It's always constantly going on. There's more to it. But I can see your guys' point. If you guys want to give bronze to 14, that's fine. Honestly, I'm just glad it's actually in the top 3 because I love the game. I think it's great. I think it's one of the best Final Fantasy stories told. The fact it's in the top 3 is pretty amazing. I did not think it would go that way at all. I thought Tactics would have won. That's okay.
And it really does illustrate how faulty the bracket system is.
This was random, GP. I couldn't be more fair. We tied so many brackets. We let the goddamn hat decide so many brackets. That's how bad and tight this race was.
And now the hat is in chat trying to be like, the hat's position is 6, 9, and 14. Like, it's too late. Don't try to butter me up now, hat. If that is your real name.
Is that even your real name, Hat?
Yeah.
William Hatner.
The fact that we need tiebreakers so much is telling of how close a lot of Final Fantasy games are in our hearts, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's I love that we're probably in our Discord. And if you're not part of the Discord, please find it and join it, where there's going to be discussions at. And I'm very much looking forward to that. Apologies will be issued, and I'm looking forward to hearing them. And it's going to be great. Right? It should be fun.
Can't wait to read all the apologies.
Final Fantasy 7 not being here is shocking. Like, there are 2 chances for Final Fantasy 7 to be in here, and not one of them made it through. And the one for 4 that 4 didn't make it, and again also had 2 shots at this, and also didn't make it to the top 3. Yeah, people are gonna hate us, guys. There's gonna be hate.
Hey, we have a very, very well mechanically vetted system. And I'm sorry, that's just the way the cookie crumbles, man.
It's scientific, really, if you look at it.
I also really like where your head's at.
Nice.
Slap it on a shirt. Put in the store.
Yes, let's do that. Trademark right there. I like where your head's at.
I like.
All right, guys. A marathon episode. These always are. This one is also very beefy for good damn reason. These are fantastic games. Again, as always, it should be said, if it's on this list of 12 games, it's fantastic. If it was not on this 12 list, it's trash. I'm sorry. It doesn't belong. Werewolf, where can folks find you?
Just here. Just here.
All right. GP, where can folks find you?
Before I tell you that, I want to say something.
I kind of want to chime in on something too.
This is such a big episode, and hear me out. Let's divide it into 3 episodes.
Pat it out.
yeah,
even
right
So
said.
wait, are we
Uh-huh.
gonna go back and do the first 4 brackets in
I-
one episode, and then the next 4 brackets is another episode, and then
Hey,
close it
don't
out
forget-
with the end?
Don't forget the 1.5 DLC bracket that comes in with the first episode too.
Yeah.
We
Jesse,
didn't even mention
Jesse,
after
you're
Please-
in.
Please, please let me do the editing for this one. I promise everything will stay exactly the same. Nobody's getting
Nothing will
voiceover.
change.
Nobody's
Just
getting
really
a voiceover.
excited about the work.
We need to have. Okay, anyway. No, you
Charlie
can just find me
Sheen
here.
couldn't save Remake.
Wow. Yeah, you can find me here on Press B to Cancel. And a big shout out and all the love to our newest sponsor, Sinistar's Hat. Thank you for bankrolling this whole thing, and felt good to be able to eat again.
Sinistar, we need a picture of this hat. If you don't want to be in it, that's
We
fine,
do.
but we need a picture of the hat. Please back away 10 feet from the camera to get a good view of the hat, because I know how big the brim is.
Yeah,
The people need to see
if the
this
hat will allow you to be in the picture. Yeah,
Yeah, if the hat
Why is
will
it
let
always
you
out
be
of
in the
focus?
picture.
it's sentient, it's organized, and it has my keys,
And I think it has my wallet.
my wallet. Yeah,
Don't give it money. Just gonna blow
I
it on
didn't give
crypto.
it, took it.
Blow it on- purchased by Titus.
The Titus
Hat
crypto.
Chard, where can folks find you?
Obviously here, Press B to Cancel with my good friends on Twitch and other social media sites under the same moniker, Charbunk.
All right. Also, congrats on joining Team Nemesis. I saw that tweet. That's awesome news to hear for you.
Yes,
So thank you for
congrats,
that.
sir.
Big stuff, dude. Big stuff.
Thank you very much, guys. I'm excited.
Well earned.
And I'm Sick Jake. I can be found mostly on Twitter, occasionally on Twitch or YouTube. I'm trying to build a new arcade stick with American style parts, but I realized that their connectors are different sizes, so I had to order a bunch of new wires. So it's going to take 2 weeks. That's the postal service for you. But I'll announce that when I have something to show, because I'm going to build a trash box out of cardboard. It's always a fun time. Otherwise, we are Press B to Cancel. Our theme song is from The Last Ancient. You can find them on Bandcamp. Please check the description for a link to their great stuff. It slaps as always. You can find our audio versions of our episodes on Stitcher and Spotify, Google and Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and honestly, literally anywhere else you listen to your podcasts. If there's a podcast app you use and you don't have Press B on it, you let me know, and I will hunt them down and make sure Press B gets listed, or I'll
Like
kindly submit it.
Jake the
But we should be
Bounty
everywhere.
Hunter.
That's right. The
We'll
podcast
put it in a
hunter.
bracket, and we'll just see what happens.
Let's see the best podcast place.
You're
I'm
not
not-
otherwise-
3 podcast listening.
and, and we also find us on YouTube. Just search for Press B to Cancel. We're goddamn everywhere on YouTube. We also trying to stream live on Fridays at 8:30 Eastern, 5:30 Pacific. I think that is it. Oh, and join our Discord and tell us how wrong we are, because honestly, looking at our top 3 of Final Fantasy 6, 9, and 14 in that order,
This is not
you guys
over.
deserve to complain about what we did today.
I don't even know how 5 didn't squeeze in there.
I know. Why is 5 not in the
Because
discussion?
it's a trash game. It wasn't part of the
It's
12.
not that great.
Yeah, honestly. And
Yeah,
I
so
like the job
clearly-
system.
Episode 3 is coming up pretty soon.
I was surprised 12 wasn't on the list. but
Final
not
Fantasy
5.
Advanced or
Yeah.
Final Fantasy Adventure should have been on this freaking list, but Chard talked me out of it.
I thought Mystic Quest was going to
Not
get
a Final
snuck in
Fantasy game, it's a mana game.
Counts.
Son
Anyway,
of a
guys,
submariner.
there.
Thank you.
This episode are sick.
This guy are sick.
There you go.
Good night, everybody.